I think it's such an effective medium because most people, especially health coaches and people that their service is helping kind of a complex personalized issue, their best content flows when they're responding to questions.
Hmm.
Like, so if they just, if a marketer says, like, just make a bunch of videos about your expertise, they freeze and they're like, but what do I talk about? What do I say? What do I make a video on? But if you put them in front of you and you just start asking them questions, they can answer those questions all day long. They have no problem. They know their expertise is something they know like the back of their hand. They're experts at what they do. They can help clients in all the different ways they help clients, but they need someone to pull the messaging out of them.
Hmm.
And that's why this is such an effective medium, because it takes the pressure off of crafting the perfect keynote or having the correct hook on a video. You just show up and you be yourself. And when the audience hears you having just a real authentic conversation, they can picture themselves having that conversation with you, which is like when you're working with a coach, you're in a conversation. The coach is asking you the right questions to pull the information out of you. So when they hear you in that context, it helps them imagine themselves working with you.
Welcome to another episode of the Health Coach Academy podcast. I'm your host, Omar Cumberbatch of OmarCumberbatch.com. So excited for you to join me today. I want to share someone who has made this show happen, right? And I'm talking about my show specifically. Jessica Rhodes has hooked me up with so many amazing guests, and I have the privilege of actually having her on the show today. She is amazing, and I know that you're going to love her. She's going to show us how we have the ability to boost our businesses through podcast guesting, and I'm just so happy to have her and finally meet her and speak to her after all these years. And she's just a pioneer in the guesting space, and she's just going to drop a whole lot of knowledge about how you can take advantage of this amazing resource as well. So please leave a rating and review on iTunes. This goes a long way for me to continuously get awesome guests like Jessica. So let's jump into the show. Hey, Jessica, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing good, Omar. How are you?
Fantastic. I want to thank you for being on the show. And like I mentioned off air, I just want to thank you for all the wonderful guests that you brought to my show. And we're going to get into that a little bit later in the show, of course. But you've been terrific giving me. I don't know if this podcast would be that successful without you and your team. So wanted to give you kudos while I can on the air in the show. And just want to say thank you again.
Thank you so much. That warms my heart. You know, it's such a win-win relationship. We're always striving to bring the best possible guests to podcast hosts, and we appreciate you having such a great show for them to be a guest on. So it is a win-win.
No, thank you. Thank you. So I want to hear everything about you. I want to know a little bit about your origin story. And then I guess what I would love to dive into was how did you figure it out? Because you've been doing this a while.
Yeah, 12 years.
Yeah, like you're one of the first people that I think had an agency that actually did this type of work. So I want to
Yeah.
kind of also get the understanding of why you felt this platform.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, my origin story is when I was, newly married and we were pregnant with our first son, I wanted to be home. I had been doing a door-to-door field canvassing job. So I worked for a nonprofit. We did door-to-door community organizing and fundraising. And then when I was pregnant, there was like a switch that flipped and I'm like, I don't want to do this. I want to be home when the baby comes. And so I called up my parents to ask them for their advice because I was at that moment, it was no longer about me and what I wanted to do. It was like, how can I be home with my baby? And my dad is a business coach and has had an online business for, multiple decades. And so he told me about virtual assistants. Most of us online entrepreneurs have a virtual assistant or multiple virtual assistants who are not employees. Like they are their own business and we are their client, but they're also a team member of ours. And so it's a beautiful relationship. And so he told me about VAs and he goes, you should start a VA business. And I was like, what's that? And so my dad said, I'll show you how to do it. He's a business coach. He goes, I'll be your first client. I was like, okay. So my dad was my first client. I started working in his business, and this was late 2012. And one of the things that my dad asked me to do for him was he said, can you book me on podcasts?
Mm,
And I was like, sure. So I started Googling. He's a business and marketing expert. So I start Googling business podcasts. And I didn't know the online world at all. I didn't know who was big, who was small, who was who. So I just start reaching out with zero. I wasn't intimidated by big names because I didn't know who any of them were,
mm,
so I just start emailing and pitching my dad as a guest to their podcast and started getting him bookings. And as I was doing this, podcast hosts were responding to me saying, like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll interview your client, but who are you? I've never been pitched before. Like at that time, like, now as a host, you've got multiple agencies reaching out. But in 2013, this is now early 2013, there were no podcast booking agencies. It didn't exist.
mm.
And PR agencies did not book on podcasts because in 2013, podcasts were like the losers in their basement talking about video games. Now, of course, entrepreneurs were using them, but they weren't at the caliber to where a PR agency would put their clients on them. Now they are. Now everyone has a podcast. But back then, it wasn't a thing. And so, long story short, my dad helped me create a business around podcast booking. So I moved away from being an hourly virtual assistant to creating an agency called Interview Connections and started booking podcast hosts, like booking guests for podcast hosts, booking people on other podcasts. I think it was about 2 years before we had our first competitor. So we were the first podcast booking agency in the world.
Yeah, no, like I said, that's amazing that you've been doing it for so long and really hit the ground running. And did you see the potential initially, or was it something that you were like kind of poo-pooing it on because everyone else was at that time?
I mean, I don't know if I saw the potential. I think, one of the things my dad always taught me, one of his like business lessons was follow the money.
Mm,
And so you look at it's another way of saying, follow where the demand is. And when I looked at the different services that I provided as a virtual assistant, I just looked at what was in demand. What did people want the most? And people wanted podcast interviews. They wanted to be booked. They wanted guests on their show. They wanted to start a podcast and they wanted connections with the right people. And so, since that was in demand, that's where I followed it. I didn't have the foresight to know how big podcasting would become, but
mhm,
I did over the first 6 months, year, 2 years. I saw it grew because I grew Interview Connections to six figures in a year. And then I
mm.
doubled the next year. And then I doubled the year after that. I was like, okay, I think this industry is growing quite a bit.
Right. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Yeah. And what's funny is that just thinking back at that time, I would have never realized that that would have been something that could have been a business either, just because I give a lot of your clients a great amount of respect because they had the foresight to say, I'm going to be able to use this. I'm going to pay somebody to get me on the podcast so that their businesses can grow as well. So, with that being said, why do you think it's such an effective medium to get them that particular person, their brand, et cetera, out there for a business growth, essentially?
Yeah, I think it's such an effective medium because most people, especially health coaches and people that their service is helping kind of a complex personalized issue, their best content flows when they're responding to questions.
Hmm.
Like, so if they just, if a marketer says, like, just make a bunch of videos about your expertise, they freeze and they're like, but what do I talk about? What do I say? What do I make a video on? But if you put them in front of you and you just start asking them questions, they can answer those questions all day long. They have no problem. They know their expertise is something they know like the back of their hand. They're experts at what they do. They can help clients in all the different ways they help clients, but they need someone to pull the messaging out of them.
Hmm.
And that's why this is such an effective medium because it takes the pressure off of crafting the perfect keynote or having the correct hook on a video. You just show up and you be yourself. And when the audience hears you having just a real, authentic conversation, they can picture themselves having that conversation with you, which is like when you're working with a coach, you're in a conversation. The coach is asking you the right questions to pull the information out of you. So when they hear you in that context, it helps them imagine themselves working with you.
Hmm. No, definitely agree. I found that was definitely one of the easier things because, and of course, obviously, I've had many of your clients as guests, I found it super easy to create content in the beginning, especially that I'm just asking questions and my guess is the content. So it was really
Mhm.
seamless when it comes to that. But being a guest on other people's podcasts and them drawing that greatness out of you is definitely one of the things that I think is the most beneficial things about podcasting.
Yeah, because then you can repurpose all the content too. You have video on and you can get little clips from the interview and then put that on social media. And so it's this strategy where you do it once and then you can use that interview 20 different ways.
Oh, definitely. So, what do you think has been the most effective angle? Because you do both. Is it being a guest on other people's podcasts or having guests come to that particular person's show?
Yeah. So back in 2016, I wrote a book called How to Rock the Podcast from Both Sides of the Mic. So that was kind of my thing for a long time, is I talked about rocking both sides of the mic. And now I talk mostly about being a guest because I find that most people need to start as a guest before they start their own show. For the reason alone that having the content pulled out of you is much easier. It gets the creativity flowing. I believe there's equal power in both. My mentor, Melanie Ann Lair, always says equal power, but different. And
Mhm.
so there's equal power in hosting your own show as there is in being a guest, but they bring different benefits. I co-host a show with my business partner Marky. We have our own podcast, and I'm also a guest on other podcasts. I'm a guest on other podcasts because it's a way for me to gain visibility to new audiences and to build relationships and connect with other podcast hosts, to have content created that's different than what I would make on my own show. But we also host our own podcast because it's our home base, right? It's where our listeners can get new content from us every single week. Um, and it's you just have a little bit more control over your own show. Like, we map out what are we going to do episodes on. Whereas when you go on someone else's show, you can give them some suggested questions, but it's up to them what they're going to ask you.
Right.
So again, equally valuable, but you have to decide, do you need visibility more, or do you have a really big audience where if you had a show for them to listen to every week, you would move them down your funnel a lot faster and easier.
Mhm. And of course, the question that they always ask first before someone even starts a podcast is like, how do you monetize a podcast? Right.
Yeah, right.
Um, and it's interesting. After all these podcasts that I've done, I think there's 100 ways that you probably can answer that question.
Hmm.
But I'm curious how you think that the monetization question can be answered. And
Hmm.
I personally feel, and we'll see if you agree with me, so it's a little bit of a premature question to ask, especially on the outset of a show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
So it depends if you have a business. I mostly talk to business owners. So I say the way that you monetize a podcast is you make it a part of your marketing strategy, you make it a part of your content marketing
Mhm.
plan. So the podcast itself doesn't usually generate revenue directly, but you create a podcast, you make podcast episodes that speak to your ideal buyer, and then you have a call to action in every podcast episode that brings that buyer through a journey towards ultimately becoming your client. So, my business partner and I, when we map out what podcast episodes we're going to do, what topics we're going to do episodes on, we think about our dream client, who's our ideal buyer, and what questions do they have? Where do they need to have a better understanding before they work with us? So we have an episode like how to know if podcast guesting is right for you, how to 10x every interview you do by repurposing your content. So we make episodes that are going to bring them down the funnel. I went on a tangent and I forgot your original question. So jump back in. Am I going in the wrong direction here,
No,
Omar?
no, 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 you absolutely do it because you did it excellent. I guess it's basically the answer is two part because it was basically how do you
Oh, monetization.
decide? Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. So that's
So I
one
started
side for sure.
I went on a tangent about this is like how you use your podcast, which is monetizing it.
Yeah.
Now, if someone's like, I don't have a business, I don't have clients, but I want to start a podcast to make money, I'm less of an expert in that. I will say manage your expectations because there's over 4 million podcasts. A lot of them aren't actively publishing. It is not easy to grow an audience to the size where you can command advertising dollars that are actually going to pay your bills and
Mhm.
be a solid chunk of revenue. It's not impossible. It's just something I say it's a little easier if you have your own business and you can use that podcast to like grow your sales and your leads for your existing business.
Interesting you brought that up because I actually took a completely different route. And I think um, a lot of people assume that they're going to have such a show that sponsors are going to come and they're going to do advertising on their show. I have a podcast course that I kind of go completely against that. And I think that the best way to make money off podcasts is affiliate marketing and networking.
I totally agree. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so if I'd love for you to dive into that because that's kind of
yeah.
one of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand, particularly how it actually works, and that you don't need 10 million listeners to get a quite a fair amount of money just through those programs alone.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you brought that up because that's a really good point. You don't have to have a company that's paying you to advertise for them, but if you have an affiliate relationship, you're going to get a commission for any sales that come through your audience. And so let's say you have 1,000 listeners. That's a little too small to have an advertiser, but if that's 1,000 really engaged listeners who are going to buy what you recommend, then you can make a decent revenue stream from your podcast. And what a lot of our clients do is they will ask the host, do you want to be an affiliate of my offer? And so then it's not just finding companies that will give you an affiliate link, but it's like you can be an affiliate of your guest
Hmm.
and then make commission from whoever comes to them from your audience.
Yeah, so just a little story, and I apologize to the audience if they've heard me say this 1,000 times, but my mentor, and hey, look, you may know him. At the time, he had the number one health and wellness show, probably when you started. It was called Underground Wellness, Sean Croxton.
I don't know him. Keep going though.
Yeah, so he's my favorite person on earth. He was the reason I got into podcasts because I loved his show so much. So I had the fortunate opportunity to work with him for a little while. And the story that he told me about affiliate marketing was the thing that just blew my mind because I think at the time he was saying he had maybe 160,000 people on his email list. And
Mhm.
at the time he had a weekly show, but every year he would do Marie Forleo's B School. Marie Forleo's B School was probably like 5 grand at the time, and her commission for affiliates was 1,000. So I just did the math one day. I was like, if 1% of his list bought it, it was
Yeah.
like 1.6 million. It was like
Yeah.
I was like I could not believe, and he would tell a story. He was like, yeah, at that time the IRS was like, what the what are you doing? Like, and it was all, he's showing it coming in. It's not like he's hiding under his mattress or anything.
Hmm.
And it was such a thing that nobody heard of at the time, and they could not appreciate it. But like you said, that's just with that 1.6
Yeah.
from 1,000 people just buying something that's high ticket.
And you have no service delivery. You
Right.
just get the commission. And that's a perfect strategy for people that are really good at sales and marketing
Yeah.
because it's a whole other beast to then have to do the service delivery too.
Yeah.
Some people crush it at sales and marketing, they close sales and then they don't deliver.
Right. Right.
Or they're like, I'm really, really good coach, but they don't know how to build an email list. They don't know how to market their business. And so then find a good affiliate partner who's going to get you clients that you can then serve.
Yeah, no, it is crazy. Just the opportunities. So
Yeah.
one of the things, obviously, your dad was a big influence. He was a business coach. He taught you a
Mhm.
lot of things. And usually the question that I have about just being good at business to start out, you definitely had the resources around you to accommodate that. What would you suggest for someone who didn't have that opportunity to have, like, I say, a business coach right out of the gate? How do you maximize your resources that are available to you?
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you like the just down and dirty details of how I got started because my dad did make me pay for his coaching program. I will say that. Now,
Oh, wow.
did I get a lot of free coaching from him? Of course, he's my dad. But at the same time, so like the first 6 months, he let me listen in on his mastermind calls. I didn't participate, but he's like, you can listen in on them. And I went through his courses and business books and things like that. You could get, so number one, you can get, there's so much free content out there, like people's business books. I have gotten more value from a lot of Alex Hormozzi's podcasts and books than I've gotten from people I've paid, over $50,000 to. So there's so much free content. So if you are like, I don't have a lot of money to invest, like be a hungry student, listen to podcasts, read books, and then implement. Because a
Mhm.
lot of people are like forever students, but then they don't take action, they don't implement. I am so scrappy. That is one of my badges of honor is I am a scrappy girl.
Mhm.
So if like sales are low, I get scrappy. I get into the trenches and I start picking up the phone. So you can really get a long way just being scrappy and consuming free content, listen to podcasts, read books. Um, look for the good free master classes and webinars, a lot of free trainings as people are just like kind of done with them. They're like, this was a whole just sales pitch. I didn't learn anything, but there are some good ones out there. Get recommendations. But I would just say like consume as much free knowledge as you can and then really be really be mindful about who you're going to invest in. It does take investment. I remember I used my credit card, my personal credit card to start going to conferences. I did have a lot of debt in the early days. I had a lot of personal credit card debt, not just from investing in my business personally, but there were some messy finances in the early in my younger years.
Yeah.
But I believed it would all pan out. And so I just used the credit card. I went to conferences, made connections, and I took action. And, having a good business coach, do what they say to do. Because a lot of people hire coaches, but they never take action.
Mm.
You've got to do what your coach advises you to do.
Right, right. I definitely agree with that. So one of the things that you did mention, and you went to these conferences, you made a lot of connections, and one of the things I think is most valuable about podcasting are the connections. I think
Yeah.
one of the things that's awesome about this platform is that in this high-paced world and just social media, like shorts and stuff like that, the amount of time that you actually spend with another human being is so valuable, right? So, I mean,
Yeah.
we're going to be on this conversation we usually say 30 to 40 minutes is the sweet spot. We've had a conversation. We had a little time off air. Can you talk about how important that value and the connections for this kind of medium is?
Absolutely. I talk a lot about the green room chat, which is how I define the time before the recording and after the recording. That is where so much business happens. It's where there's even deeper conversation, right? Things that maybe the host or the guest doesn't want to say on the recording. They'll go a little bit deeper off air. Especially for health coaches and people who have health topics, the host may want to go deeper or reveal something about their own health challenge that they wouldn't bring up on the podcast. But then afterwards, they feel super comfortable with you. And so they'll start talking about it and then say, like, how do I work with you? What's your program? Can I do a session with you? So it is the relationship with the host. I always like to say it's not just a broadcast strategy, it's a networking strategy. So really focus on the host of the show and build a strong connection with them.
Yeah. No, I have met so many people, people who I never would have imagined I'd have a conversation with have been so gracious and so revealing to so many different aspects of like you said, their health, their
Yeah.
business, just giving insight to things that I would never have had the opportunity otherwise. So I think that
Yeah.
is such an important thing. So
Yeah.
we know we talked about, and I think this is probably where we'll close. I do want to give you an opportunity to talk about your company just
Mhm.
overall because of just the wonderful benefit it's afforded me. But yeah, just give us a little bit about what you do, how that actually works, and of course, if anybody is interested in being on either side of the services that you offer, how can they get these services?
Yeah, so we're done for you booking agencies. So our paid services for the entrepreneur that wants to be a guest. So what we do, like if you were to work with us as an entrepreneur that wants to be booked on podcasts as a guest, you would have our booking team to personally represent you, find shows that are the right fit for you, pitch you, get you booked, and then we audit the strategy. So, for example, after the first 10 interviews get recorded, we pause, we audit one of your interviews, we do a retrospective of the first 10 bookings to make sure it was all a good fit. Because that's important too. You don't want to burn through 30 interviews and realize, oh, it didn't work. So we also are with you like as your sideline coach. helping to make sure that you're growing your business from the visibility and from the connections that you're making. So that's kind of what we do with clients. And then if you're a podcast host, I mean, I just sent out an email this morning. Like, if you're a podcast host and you need guests, fill out this form. That's totally free. We don't charge podcast hosts unless you want to hire us and say, I want you to be my booker. We could definitely talk about that. But for the most part, you tell us what types of guests you want to have on your show. And we represent over 150 entrepreneurs. So we come to you and say, this is who we have. That's a good fit. This is, they have what you're looking for. Do you want me to connect you? So that's what it looks like. And our website is interviewconnections.com. You can also, if you find me on LinkedIn or Instagram, you could just reach out to me on social media if you just want to chat and ask any questions.
Now, I guess this is the selfish question that I have. I like to throw in one of those.
I love a selfish question. Yes.
Do you do multiple lanes now? In other words, do you have, obviously I've had tons of health and wellness folks, some business folks. I
Oh,
don't,
yeah.
what different topics do you explore generally?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. We work with so our clients are, for the most part, all entrepreneurs with a service-based business that they can do virtually. So that's going to include anyone in, business, B2B, marketing, coaching, consulting, health and wellness. We do have some product entrepreneurs, a couple like supplement brands and things like that. Real estate investors, people that coach real estate investing, some financial planners. So that's kind of those are the main buckets and industries that we serve. The few industries that we don't serve are like fiction authors and novelists. That's not an industry we work with. Yeah, that's the only one off the top of my head that we get a lot of fiction authors, and that's just not kind of an area that we work with. But for the most part, yeah, it's like entrepreneurs across many different industries.
That's awesome. So where do you think the company is going to be going next?
I mean, we're just focused on growing. Like, I still hear today people say, oh, I didn't know a company like this existed. So it's just continued visibility. We're creating a new offer right now that's going to be the name, I believe, it hasn't gone live yet, so it's always could change, but Monetize the Mic Accelerator, which is a monthly membership, very low cost monthly membership for folks to get ready to get booked on podcasts. So you have a business, but maybe you need to, work on your marketing funnel a little bit or your sales skills. So we're going to be launching a membership offer to, because our done for you service, it's a high ticket investment. So for those who aren't quite ready for that, we're creating a new offer. So I'm really excited for that, to be able to work with more people.
No, that's great. And I can't wait to keep up with all the great things that you're doing. Like I said, you've been fabulous representation of what podcasts can possibly be, and have created so many successful shows and boosted businesses for so many different people. So I thank you for sticking in the space, and I can't wait to see what's next. So yeah, if you just want to leave anything else as far as how to keep in touch with all those good things that you're doing, I know that you
Yeah.
provided the website, but if you do want to add, your social media handles, feel free to do.
Yeah. So I'll drop a few different things. Like, if you're on Instagram, you can follow us at Interview Connections. I'm also on LinkedIn, Jessica Rhodes, Rhodes. We do have a free gift, which is a podcast prep checklist. So if you are starting to get on podcasts and you want like a checklist to make sure you're prepared, we have that at interviewconnections.com/prep.
Awesome. All right. I'll definitely look out for that as well. So Jessica, again, thank you for everything. Thank you for being on the show. I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed listening to today's episode of the Health Coach Academy podcast. If you did, jump over to iTunes and leave a rating and or review. It goes a long way in helping get this message out to our fellow health coaches and people in our industry. Also, if you can, jump over to my website, omarcumberbatch.com, where I give out a lot of freebies, including my 5-day sugar challenge for people who are having issues with sugar. And also for health coaches, I have the book, Hidden. It's the 6 not so obvious ways to get your clients unstuck. Have a great day.